Allan Branch.
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce you to the audience for the limited series podcast promoting my book.
Sure.
And I think the first question I had to answer when I said, hey, how can I explain Allan being on the podcast?
Sure.
I was like, well, I need to explain how weird things intersect in my life.
Yeah.
And I met you, Allan, and I don't know if you want to introduce yourself to the folks real quick.
Sure. Oh my gosh. I build software companies.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm kind of a designer, kind of a programmer, I guess, a little bit. At this point, I'm really more of a product manager. So I build the teams, and when they get to about $5 million in revenue, I usually jump to the next project. And we met through co-working, but I'm born and raised in Panama City, which is where we are now. And I own breweries now.
So
breweries and real estate and software.
You
and
did
wedding
no
venues.
brewing whatsoever when I first met you.
Yeah.
And my passion for brewing was one of the things that helped sustain me through the end of our 2003 deployment in Iraq.
Okay.
The tail end of the book that I'm going to write about, Red Platoon with the Spartan Brigade and all that stuff, and old Army stuff. And I don't want it to be a war book about the whole macho stuff. I just want it to be about people being people, And I kind of enjoyed that when I first met you because it was a very weird point in my life. I was actually starting up a company to build iPhone apps at the time.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was something that I'd always wanted to do and have my own business. And pretty much right when I shut the doors is when I met you, and I was like, holy cow, if I had met this guy 6 months earlier, I would have done a total different thing in my life, but it didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
But we still managed to stay in touch. And, in life, how things go, everybody has their own little differences.
Sure.
Like, I'm do a lot more military stuff
Sure.
and all that. And when I was in National Guard, it just having a small business or business where you would have to devote time beyond a regular work week was beyond me. And now here you go blow up the whole thing again, and you're running for mayor.
I'm running for mayor, yeah.
So I'm like, this guy is like some sort of workaholic junkie.
I am a workaholic junkie. I think there is this weird, what you find in engineers of all kinds of engineers, computer engineers, software engineers, civil engineers. There is a lot of beer brewers. There is a lot of coffee roasters. There's a lot of pilots, a lot of sailors, a lot of beekeepers, a lot of woodworkers. Anything that requires prep and analysis of things, especially weather, and tinkering and iterating on things.
Yeah.
And so beer brewing is sort of the natural path for programmers or computer people of the age of about 27 is kind of when they start getting into it. And so, I brewed beer for a little bit, just enough to know that I didn't want to do it as a day job.
Yeah.
And just enough to understand the art and science of it. And just enough to realize that I could start. I don't think it's a good idea to start a business around a thing that you love, because then you ruin the thing that you love. And so I appreciate brewing. I like brewing. I know how to brew, but I didn't want. I can own breweries and not ruin the art, because then I don't want to brew all day, so I don't brew. So I like the business side of brewing.
Right, but yet on the same side, like for me, my standpoint, when I met you and Steve, and you all had. I don't think you had made it real big yet.
Yeah, I don't think we ever made it real big. But yeah, big-ish or big.
Bigger.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, you downplay it, but you have had some really cool achievements. And, when I met you two guys and Steve, and I got into some conversations, and we talked about motorcycle racing and software and different stuff. And I was like a hardware guy. I didn't want to learn software. I just wanted to do the hardware stuff and figure all that out. And it changed my way of looking at it, which, because of my experiences in Iraq and different stuff in my life, like a lot of people don't realize I already had my bachelor's in double E before I went back in the Army in 2002 after September 11th. So I had the .com job. I had worked at a cool telecom company, and I was like, thought life was set. And then the .com bust happened, and I got caught up in that. And 9/11, and I said, hey, I got good skills in the Army. Why don't I just go do that again for a little bit? And people are all like, but you already have a college degree. Why are you going in enlisted?
Yeah.
And I'm all like, because I'm good at this.
Yeah, one day when we are adults, we'll know what we want to be with ourselves and our lives. So, yeah, it's kind of your traditional path as an adult. Previous generations would just pick a career at 18 or 19 and work it to retirement.
Yep, that is the traditional model.
Yeah, and so that's kind of boring in my opinion, and sort of the routine of things becomes boring. I think that's kind of common for a lot of people who have a thirst for knowledge and a curiosity for knowledge, which you clearly do and I clearly do. And so it's fun starting things, and it's fun kind of letting things lift off. And that's kind of why I like the first $5 million in revenue in a company, because then it moves from a pirate ship into a company. And I don't like building companies. I like building pirate ships.
Yeah.
And so that's when you have HR policies and you have to submit receipts, and there's, that's when I'm like, the organization becomes too much. And I'm like, in software companies, I like building, designing software. So it's different. So.
Yeah. And honestly, when I first met you, I had to start reading up on you, and I checked out all your blogs and stuff, and I'm all like, here's this guy that is going out on a hope and a prayer, doing this company thing and getting by, and he is comfortable writing about his trials. And I was like, man, because I had come back from Iraq. I moved here in 2006, and I written my book, and I looked at it and I said, no, I am not writing this. This is a part of something that I'm not really ready to share.
Sure.
And yet you're open to that. Yeah. And it's like, I'm like, are you going to start doing a weekly or monthly blog as the mayor?
Well, potentially. So I find I didn't grow up with a love of writing or reading even. Played football in high school and college. I was an art major in college, actually. And I wanted to be an art teacher and football coach. I didn't find writing enjoyable until really I became a parent. And I sort of forced myself to write the first hour every day about business or life. And the blog that you're referring to is our blog at lesseverything.com. Yes. It's not even optimized for mobile. That's how old it is. And so it's still full screen width, and you got to scroll right and left to see the whole thing. But we would write every single day for about 8 years on it, about something to do. And that's really when transparency of business became interesting to people, like the idea that a business owner was a person and had a family and had doubts and insecurities and courage and fears and all the things. Yeah. And so I found that writing was very therapeutic. I enjoyed it. It feels good to get the words out of you. And I still keep a private blog that I started over 10 years ago on Tumblr. It's not published, and I'm mostly writing about me and parenting and even being a husband. I wrote a blog post today, and sometimes it's one sentence, two sentences. It's a note. I really feel like that is it's a journal that I'll give to my children one day when they become parents, so they can see me as a person who's experiencing them as children as an imperfect parent. Right. And they can see me in a different light as their own parents and as they become parents. And so I love writing just for the idea of capturing a moment and a thought, being able to look back on it, but also just getting it out of you. It's almost like if you say you're scared or you say it feels good to release the words that you're keeping in you. Bottling up words and bottling up feelings is hard, and I don't think it's good. And so writing it down is kind of a good way to kind of release the thought.
See, you take the words out of my mouth,
Yeah.
and like when I talk to like VA therapy
Mhm.
people and
Yeah.
stuff like that, they use much better words
Sure.
than people like me and you. But I'm
Yeah.
all like, yeah, I just do this. I write it down on a piece of paper, I crumple it up, and
Yeah.
I throw it away.
Yeah,
And I'm happy.
It feels good. It's kind of like there's a group here called Screaming Into the Void, and they'll go out to the bay and they'll just yell for like 30 seconds, and just the act of opening your lungs up and releasing air feels good.
Yeah.
You feel better, because you know what happens when you start getting stressed is you start slunching over and not breathing deeply, and all the things. I find that when I'm the most stressed, my mind goes into things like telling myself I'm too busy to go for a 5-minute walk.
Right.
And so when I know my telltale sign of I'm too stressed out or I'm working too much is when I go, I'm too busy to walk for 5 minutes. And I'm like, no, I got 5 minutes. And so, yeah, writing's another one of those things that I have to force myself to do, but I feel better after I do it.
Yep. I definitely. And it's kind of this whole project for me is something to me to get something behind on in my life.
Right.
And, you know, I just wanted to have you here to talk about it, to let you know that
Yeah.
even though we have never really gone into discussing it, because
Sure.
we're both, gosh, Alan, we can hardly find the time to
Oh,
get
man, it's
together. I
wild.
mean,
Busy.
what's it been like 2-3 months since we had been able to even have a
Yeah.
lunch?
Oh, it's wild.
And
I'm full campaign trail right now, so
Yeah.
it's 12 hours a day. But yeah, it's hard as busy adults sitting down. We've even dove before. I haven't dove in like over a year now.
Yeah.
So we got to start diving. But I definitely, writing is very important to me now. It was not important until probably about 15 years ago. But it is part of sort of my self-therapy. And I went to a men's Christian retreat called Wild at Heart. And there was a writer named John Eldridge that was spearheading it. And one of the things that kind of stuck in my head is he said, you are writing your own story that someone else is going to tell. Hopefully they tell it in a truthful way. And I always thought, like, I lost my grandfather. I never met my grandfather. He started all these businesses here in town, and he died when he was 38. And a lot of these businesses still exist. And they're run by my cousins, and they're run by my parents, and we've sold a few. And all I have from his existence, he died when he was 38, all I have is some business cards and some photos. And I have a scrapbook that he has little notes in.
Yep.
And those notes are very important to me. And I've always thought, like, well, if something were to happen to me, I'd really want my kids to be able to have something to pass to my grandkids, to be like, hey, man, your grandpa wasn't perfect, but here's some things that he thought. And, he was good in the time that he was here and tried to do good things. And so part of me writing is a little bit of legacy too, a little bit able to actually writing my story.
Yep.
And so all the things, man.
Yeah. And, like one of the things that I'm trying to find the words to express it. Writing about things like even when I was just an engineer, when I would write through a problem, and that's when I did my project management stuff. When I did all that PMP stuff and all that certification, I said, hey, listen, I already knew all this stuff. But now that I've had to formulate it and write down and talk about the steps of how I go about analyzing and building a project, it made me understand it so much more. And it was like, okay, and I've had some people that, that piece of paper and a 25 cents will get you a cup of coffee.
Sure.
I don't know where you're going to get coffee at that price now,
No.
but I'm just like, wow, man, so like doing stuff like that started becoming important. And we had our first reunion of our Army unit this year. And my old tank commander passed away before we could have the reunion. But everybody kept saying, oh, yeah, we got this Thunder Run book. They wrote it, but they wrote it like the publishing date was 2004. I'm like, bro, we were still in Iraq in August. And I'm all like, so that dude wrote that book, got out of there, And um, when I started in my area of technology, I was dealing with some AI stuff at the time. So I was like, hey, man, what is AI history going to remember about
Sure.
our, the
Sure.
Thunder Run,
Mhm.
2nd Brigade, 3rd ID,
Mhm.
And it's like, it talks about all the great technology and air superiority and all this other stuff. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. I had a road wheel on my tank roll off to the side. I mean, that's like seeing one of your tires roll off to the side as you're driving down the road. And I'm
Sure.
like, oh boy.
Sure.
You know?
Well, certainly for a shared traumatic experience, it'd be interesting to see everyone writing their own stories and see how well they match up. Because your brain has these protectionary mechanisms when it's stressed of like, almost like remembering things in a way where it doesn't crush you.
Yes.
It kind of protects itself, like calluses itself around traumatic experiences, from what I've seen and heard. And it'd be interesting to see how everyone's stories match up, because everyone had their own traumatic experience, I'm sure.
That's actually kind of, I was hoping to do like maybe some Kickstarter or something
Yeah.
with it, but my life right now with the current job and all is a little bit too busy. But that's exactly the kind of thinking that I was trying to get to, because I was like, man, if I can write down my story, I know not all the guys that I served with are writers. I mean, somebody that writes stuff very often,
Mhm.
I don't know, other than making a Facebook post or something, how
Sure.
often do people write anymore?
Sure. Yeah, you'd probably capture that through just audio interviews.
Yeah.
Just capturing like an interview style thing. My grandfather, who was a child of the Great Depression, who had their own traumatic experiences growing up in the Great Depression,
Oh, yeah.
they were all broken a certain kind of way as adults, and he had his own issues. But I thought about even writing. I've written about 25 pages of a screenplay about his life that are, it follows the narrative of the facts, but it kind of strays from it. And I've always felt there's a void in that. I don't know what he experienced. He did so much for us as a family, and I don't really know much about him. And so I've always had this void in me. And I've always like, well, maybe I can write my own story of what he was like for him. Because his father left, and he built a home when he was 14 for his mom, and took care of his brothers and sisters. And so, yeah, we all deal with this trauma in different ways. Sometimes you suppress it. You heard a lot of that in World War II, where people would come back. My wife's grandfather actually was a tank engineer, and he wouldn't talk about World War II at all.
Yeah.
And so some people bottle it up and hold it in. Some people need to release it, and we all deal with trauma in different ways.
Yeah, I saw shortly after I moved here and got out of active duty Army, my grandfather from World War II passed away.
Yeah.
And I went up to Tennessee, and he would never talk about his experience on
Sure.
submarines in the Pacific until on his deathbed. And that is all he would talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, that is like all that was in his memories. And I was like, oh man, I was like, I better figure out the stuff that I went through,
Sure.
how to figure that out in my life. So that's kind of shaped my life. And like, that's why I joined the National Guard,
Sure.
because it helped me feel more part of the community and, in its own way, have some better memories than
Sure.
getting shot at all the time.
Sure. Sure.
And, you know, I actually found out there's stuff I don't remember.
Mhm.
I mean, there are other people that say, yeah, don't you remember when that happened? And I'm like, I know it happened,
Right.
but that exact memory, if I try to remember it, I get sick.
Sure.
And it's like, you got to be kidding me, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, there are people that like to talk about this stuff on podcasts. I'm like, nah, not me, man.
Yeah.
That's why I'm trying to write a book kind of like different.
Sure. Well,
So,
your body goes into shock to protect itself when
yeah.
it's hurt, and so I'm sure your brain blocks out things that it doesn't want you to remember. Um, so that's why there's all these kind of alternative medicines now, ayahuasca and things to help your brain become more malleable so you can release things and deal with them. And so it's trauma's an interesting thing, but I definitely recommend writing out. That's one of my favorite things.
Well, and that's the whole point with the book. And you were one of my inspirations for the book. So I kind of wanted to share that little intersection and have you on the podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you. The thing about writing, most people are so scared to do anything in life to be judged. Anything. The nice thing about writing or hosting an event, when you fail, and no one even notices because no one's there. And so, if no one reads it, that's fine too. It wasn't necessarily for them. The goal was for you. So it doesn't have success in something like this doesn't necessarily have to be best-selling New York Times list, right? It's just the releasing of information, releasing of the story. Eric Darnell, who does our video work, has for like 13 years. His grandfather was a medic in World War II called the Raiders, something like that. And he wrote a book called Men Cry Too. It should be called as well, but that's poor grammar. But anyways, it actually has a few copies of it. He's read it here recently. So
Really?
Yeah, his grandfather's passed away. And so it's nice getting that out. And I'm sure he didn't make a lot of money off the book, if any at all. But it's about, the continuation of telling the story and releasing those thoughts and feelings. So.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's what writing started out as being. And it's turned into just, I hate to say it, it feels like most writing is just marketing material anymore.
It's true, sure.
And like a lot of times when I read a biography, like Bill Gates' biography is coming out soon, it's like, okay, cool, Bill, you have your little life story and, you had a lot more opportunities than some other folks in the tech scene. But, I read, what was that other, Steve Jobs' book. And I thought that was just fascinating.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I read those books, I'm like, these are casting these guys, they did not write this. They paid somebody to do a biography on them and they edited out whatever they wanted.
Sure.
And it's kind of interesting to me because it seems like a lot of people with the social media and stuff, they want to live in a little bubble and they edit out, or they, like, in the old days when somebody was exiled, like, that was a big thing. But now you got these little social cliques on the social media and they'll exile people for bringing up stuff. And I'm like, man,
Well, a spoken story or a written story is all one version of the story.
Yeah.
And then even now it used to be, they'd say in football, they would say the eye in the sky don't lie, which means we're going to watch the video footage and it's not going to lie. But now video footage can lie. And so,
I was about to say, man, like,
so even with witnessing crimes, there's so much data that shows that people don't remember things correctly.
Right.
And so it's even a person who thinks they're telling the honest truth of a story, that's only their point of view of it.
Well, like, even when, so like I get with people because I'm all like, listen, man, my second deployment, 2005, I became real good friends with our Iraqi interpreter. So I got to understand their standpoint on a lot of stuff. So, like, the cultural cognitive way of explaining stuff is important, sometimes as important as contextual. So like, it's like when you go to a Southern diner and the waitress says, "Kiss my grits." It's kind of a term of affection, but it's also a little, hey, but you're not going to say that to a stranger.
Sure.
And there's other cultural things that, unless you have been outside of your cultural norm, you don't get. So I've noticed that too with like some books and writings. Some people like really don't get it, and I'm all like, hey man, if you've never been in that situation, you won't understand what they're writing.
Sure.
And, you know, you can relate it to in as much as possible, but it's finding that common ground. And I guess like with the video shorts and the other ways social media and a lot of stuff seems to be going, I'm kind of curious on how that's going to work because I, I have conversations when, and you got young kids too, and I'm all like, I don't understand how you are putting these words together in anything meaningful.
Sure.
So, yeah, well,
Yeah, we're definitely at a point in the world that the attention spans are getting shorter and shorter.
yeah,
And it's tough because people are trying to distill down words and distill down theories and thoughts shorter and shorter so they can get the most the furthest reach with it for the algorithm. And it's interesting. Long form content like this, I still think there's a place for it. But to get sort of the feeding reach that you need, you cut it down. So people they get kind of curious. Teasers,
yeah,
movie trailers. I mean, it's a distillation of the movie. So
yeah. And but my thing is, a lot of times when I see the movie trailers anymore, and after watching the ads, I don't need to see the movie.
it's true. It's true.
I'm like, man, So like my thing as an author, I'm trying to do these podcasts as like parallel content or like, before content, sneak content. So if people like the book and they pick it up, they got it. And then the other part for me is like getting out onto social media, understanding podcasts. I'm all like, man, how could I ever criticize somebody that does a podcast if I don't understand what it's like? And like, even at this point, with no published podcast, I have a little bit of hesitancy of putting some of the stuff out there because I'm all like, oh man, people can start dissecting it. They can start coming at me. And it's like, you know what, man, that's fine. I'm not a perfect person.
Sure.
And I'm going to try and write this book. We'll see how it goes. But honestly, I'm just trying to live a nice, full life. And I think a lot of the people that are trying to do podcasts and stuff out there now, they seem to be trying to get an audience. And because as soon as you get over, like, what is it, like 10,000 viewers or something, you move from a regular person to an influencer or something.
Sure.
And it's like, man, being a guy that loved tech and loved it for years, I'm all like, oh, we can be going down some dangerous roads if we're going where this is what, because I have met young engineers that said, I should have been a YouTube influencer or something. And I'm like, when is engineering as a career below being an influencer? I'm just like, wow, that's kind of weird.
It's the desire of wanting the popularity versus knowing how to do the art.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to just be famous versus being a famous artist. And there's a little bit of a different angle in there. But that's what we encourage. We encourage that society. It's cooler to be famous for being stupid than it is not well known for being super smart. And so that's just what we've seen to be the truth of what's interesting now. And so, yeah, you talk to a lot of kids now, and they want to be influencers just because they want to be seen and heard and have eyes. And the flip side of that is you also get judged. And you kind of touched on that with being misunderstood of releasing content. And so the only way you avoid not being misunderstood is just hiding. So no matter what you do, you're going to be misunderstood. No matter how well you put it, you're going to be misunderstood.